Welcome to another painting tutorial. This one we're going to look at the new contrast paints. So I wanted to paint up an Ork Boy, and just to see how this would go, seeing as if you're collecting orcs, you're going to be painting lots of these guys. So I'm putting on a coat of Wraithbone base coat with an airbrush. Just watered it down a little bit and spraying it through rather than using the spray. A little bit tedious. I couldn't quite get the mix exactly right, but it did go on nicely and no issue with the contrast over top. So definitely an option if you want to do that. Here I'm laying on the contrast orc flesh, just on all the fleshy bits, and as you can see it goes on nicely. What I'm going to do with this, guys, I'm going to do the contrast colors first, and then I do a couple extra layers of highlighting, totally optional, and I'll explain that at the end. So now putting some snakebite leather on all the leather straps, and this one here, because it's going to be black beside it, I didn't worry too much about being super precise, whereas I did a little bit more. I didn't want to have any of the green on top of this, so I'm trying to work from the lowest colors up in terms of, you know, working from the skin sort of up to the higher parts, but also trying to do the darkest colors last, if that makes any sense. One of the things notice with a contrast, because you can kind of go back with your different layer paints, you can touch things up with those later. So for example, if you got some of this black on the snakebite leather, you could go back. The Citadel Paint app sort of gives you suggestions for what you can highlight each of the contrast bases with, and when you do that, you can cover up sort of any blemishes that you get from whatever other colors you're doing. So these all go on very nicely, go on sort of like an ink wash. I really like this look. I like the black. It makes it super easy to get a nice highlighted black in a single coat, which I've experimented with different things over the years, doing sort of gray undercoats and then doing null and oil washes, that sort of thing. I really like how this kind of turns out. Okay, now putting on some lead belcher silver. I didn't go with a non-metallic look just because that's nothing else in my army has that. So just putting some lead belcher on all the silver bits and adding some details here. As you can see, the model is basically done at this point. We're very close. You know, if you want it to be tabletop, 3 colors is kind of all you need. And for Ork Boys, if you're having hundreds of these, this is a really good start. You can get them on the table painted very quick. Adding a little bit of a checkered pattern on the shoulder pad, as I do with most of my Goth boys. So it's using a light gray here to sketch it out and fill in every other one. And then I'm going to touch this up after with some white and black. Trick here is to thin down the paints, and it goes on nice and thin. You can do 2 coats if you need to. Using the white here to sort of highlight some of the edges. And cover up some of the transparent bits, and using the Abaddon black now just to square things up just a touch. Again, it's orcs, it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, going back now with some Wraithbone and getting any of the bits that are going to be different colors here. So I'm going to add a little bit of red, just because my orcs often have a little bit of red on them for the Goths, and doing the teeth, base coating that with Wraithbone. And fingernails as well. Doing some null and oil wash now on any of the silver bits. You could also do a Agrax Earthshade wash to give it a bit more rusty look. I didn't bother highlighting this after, again, just trying to get a nice quick paint job on these guys just to test out this as a concept and see what it looks like. As you can see, it looks great. I think for tabletop this is awesome. Awesome way to lay down some paints really quick. Especially for the rank and file guys. The contrast red there, and then some of the contrast bone color. It's actually not the proper bone color. I didn't get that one. I'm going to have to pick that up later. Doing a quick base here with some of this wildwood. Didn't have to do it with contrast paints, but just practicing just to see what it would look like. If you did put the texture on first and you base coated it, you probably could do that with a contrast. Base coat it with a Wraithbone or whatever. Adding a little bit of Warboss green to bring up some of the highlights. I like my orcs nice and bright. This is totally optional. Doesn't add a ton to the model, but I just thought I'd do this just to see how the layers go on top of the contrast, and they go on great. Basically, the contrast worked like a base and a base coat and a wash, and then retouching up the base coat. So the highlights really just kind of bring out some of the areas, which if you want to do that, that's great. If you don't want to, that's fine too. The contrasts look great on their own. Adding a little bit of Evil Sunz Scarlet and Wild Rider Red to the red bits here, again, just to bring up the brightness on the red. Pretty optional. Overall, very happy with how this model painted. If I had skipped these extra layers, this model would have been painted in no time at all, and it is a really great way to paint up your rake and file. Anyways, if you have any questions or comments about future contrast tutorials, let me know, and send me a comment. See you next time.